Brett Kavanaugh is having his hearings this week. He's, trying to get on the Supreme Court, so he's getting grilled by a bunch of senators. He was asked a question about whether or not the president can pardon himself, and his answer, I think, is genuinely terrifying.
Trump claims he has an absolute right to pardon himself, does he?
The question of self-pardons is something I've never analyzed. It's a question that I've not written about. It's a question, therefore, that's a hypothetical question that I can't begin to answer in this context as a sitting judge and as a nominee to the Supreme Court.
And the other half of that is the obvious one. Does the president have the ability to pardon somebody in exchange for a promise from that person they wouldn't testify against him?
Sarah, I'm not going to answer hypothetical questions of that sort. And there's a good reason for it. When judges don't, when we decide, we get briefs and arguments of the parties. We have a record. We have an appendix with all the information. We have amicus briefs, and then I never decide anything alone. I'm in a panel of 3, and if I'm confirmed to the Supreme Court, I'd be on a team of 9.
For those of you who aren't familiar with these kinds of hearings, basically what happens in almost all of them is they bullshit. And it's hilarious because they like to pretend like they're not bullshitting, and they act like, oh no, I'm a serious judge, so, I'm above partisan politics, and I just call balls and strikes. That's all I do. I'm not here putting my opinion on everything. I don't have my own philosophy. I'm not a political guy. I just call balls and strikes. So there's a lot of bullshitting that goes on in these hearings. And they try to make people think like, oh no, my mind is totally open. I'm not a partisan actor who decides things based off my own ideology. No, I just interpret the laws as written. I interpret the Constitution as written. I'm not adding anything to it. Well, that's nonsense because even if you have a literalist interpretation of the Constitution, that is political. It's always political. It's political if you view the Constitution as a living document that can be read in a loose way where you can allow things that aren't explicitly written out. And it's political if you say, no, I'm going to go exactly by the words on the page, because it's not like everything is super clear and there's never room for differing interpretations of the literal text. So all they do is bullshit in these hearings. And for those of you who don't know, they're people like anybody else, and they are deeply political, and they use, the law and the Constitution to rationalize their political ideology. That's what they do. So, but having said that, I already hate that aspect of it because they pretend like they're straight shooters, but they're bullshitting. But are there some instances where, okay, you got to put the bullshit aside and you got to keep it real here? Yes, there are instances of that. And when you're asked a question like, hey, should the president be allowed to pardon himself? And you can't answer with a very straightforward no, that's it. You're disqualified. You should not be in the position that you're in. Every single person should vote against you. Every single American should be appalled by what you said, because that argument, that sidestep, basically flies in the face of everything that's ever been good about the Enlightenment and Western civilization. Because that says, oh, rule of law is not rule of law, and the leader can be above rule of law. So in other words, it's supposed to be that justice is blind and everybody's equal under the law, but no, he's saying, can the president pardon himself? I don't know. I'd have to look at the facts. The fact that you say that is embarrassing. Because if, indeed, you came out on the side of, yes, the president can pardon himself, then we don't have a president. We have an emperor. We have a dictator. We have a fascist leader who could do whatever he wants to do. We have a tyrant. Yeah, sure, I broke the law, but it doesn't matter, because I'm going to pardon myself anyway, and the law doesn't apply to me. How do you not see how that undermines our entire system of government, or at least what our system of government is supposed to be if we actually abide by our highest ideals? How do you not see that? Basically, that question framed another way is, should the president have the ability to become a dictator? That's what that question is, just phrased a different way. That's all that is. Should the president have the ability to become a dictator and do whatever he wants and not have to face consequences ever? That's what that question is. Well, I don't know. I'm on the court with 9 other people, and I'd have to look at the facts of the case. And disqualified. And, it drives me crazy that the people who tend to get approved in these hearings are the people who bullshit the most. Now, that's not across the board, because it's actually very interesting, and I'll have a story on this later where I show you the video of it, but it's the further left you go with the judges, the more honest they are. I shouldn't be surprised by that, but I am. It's like the people who are on the left are just they're more honest and straightforward. Yeah, this is what I believe. Oh, Roe versus Wade, it was a good decision. Whereas the people on the right are like, well, I don't let my own personal decisions cloud my judgment. I'll just tell you what the law says, and I can't give you any answers to questions now because these are hypotheticals, good sir. You're full of shit. You're full of shit. And that's one issue where you had to answer. No, the president can't pardon himself, because then we're not the United States of America anymore. I'm telling you, man, history will judge us. We are a crumbling empire. That's happening right now. But history will judge us in the harshest way possible, because we've done this on so many non-debatable issues. Like, we did it with torture, like, oh, sure. Objective observers might call this torture, but I call it enhanced interrogation. Well, how do you respond to the fact that you took the techniques on how to torture from communist Chinese manifestos on how to torture? Well, I say, when we do it, it doesn't count, because we're the good guys by definition. Well, then you're a fucking idiot, and history will judge you harshly, and that should be the case. It should be the case that history will laugh at you and scoff at you and mock you when you have open an extrajudicial prison at Guantanamo Bay where innocent people are held for decades, and at the same time you go around pretending like, all we care about is human rights. We're the morality police of the world. Yes, we are. And this happens time and time and time again, whether it's torture, whether it's drone strikes, whether it's illegal offensive invasions against countries that didn't attack us, whether it's occupying these countries after the fact. Now it's the question of, should the president be able to pardon himself? So, hey, should rule of law apply? Or should it just not if we determine somebody's our leader? Just because you wear a suit and tie and went to good schools doesn't mean you're smart. You could be one of the biggest idiots on the fucking planet, but have a good pedigree and go to the good schools, and I wear my suit and tie, so therefore I'm very smart. Now let me proceed to bullshit you about the most basic principles of the Enlightenment and the Magna Carta and Western civilization.